Okay, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. We will call to order the January meeting of the Binghamton Traffic Board. It's January 9th, 2025. First item of business is approval of the minutes from the November and December 2024 meetings. One note on the December 2024 meetings, we'll just need to amend the second for the 29 Fayette Street measure, which was just a tabling onto this month's agenda, but it should be reflected in the minutes as DPW Commissioner Paludi made the second on that motion. So if no objections, I would just look for a motion to approve both of those sets of minutes as amended. Is
Motion.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on today to our public comment portion of the meeting. I see no one here for public comment today. So we can move right down to our new business. First item is a review of the Leroy Street Road Safety Assessment, and we're happy to welcome up today representatives from BMTS to present. Wherever you're comfortable, your mic should work here if that's easier. But just for a little bit of background, the city reached out to BMTS last year and asked if they would be willing to conduct a road safety assessment of the Leroy Street corridor for us. This was following some recent crashes in the area and some concerns we had been hearing from residents about the safety of both pedestrians and motorists there. So we're very grateful BMTS was willing to do that for us, and they've worked with the city the last several months on this. So I am happy to turn it over today to the BMTS team to just kind of run through the RSA and share with us what they've learned and any recommendations from the assessment. So you just make sure your light is on green here. We should be able to hear you.
Thanks, Megan. So we conducted a walking audit. A number of you were actually there from the traffic board. Actually 3 council members attended. We did 2 separate walking audits, and a number of neighbors also participated in the walking audit. The purpose of that was to go out and kind of view the corridor and the real world situation to understand what it felt like to be there and understand what might be missing in terms of striping and signage, and take note of that, and then help develop recommendations based on what we saw in the field. The other thing that BMTS does is we collect crash data from the state of New York. They have a online database and we can collect crash data from. So we did that as well. And we also went out and had our consultants collect speed data along 2 segments of the corridor as well. So we can see if there was some issues with speeding occurring along the corridor, at least during the time frame in which that data was collected. I would note there was, as Megan pointed out, some issues that had been raised regarding crashes. The crash data revealed that there were 2 intersections, Millard and Chapin, that were of particular concern. Neighbors, particularly at Chapin, expressed concerns with crashes that were happening there and some of the issues with sight distance that might be causing crashes. So when we looked at the crash data, we did find that there were a significant number of crashes that were happening at those 2 intersections. So what we did was we did a warrant analysis to determine whether or not those intersections warranted a 4-way stop control. This is one of the things that the neighbors expressed an interest in us looking at, and also the city. So we did that. There are a number of warrants in the manual for uniform traffic control devices that guides us into determining whether or not a 4-way stop control is warranted. Both of those intersections met 2 of the warrants, one being the number of crashes over a 3-year period, and the second being sight distance issues. We believe that the sight distance issues can be addressed by trimming some of the hedges that have grown up at those corners. The other issue, of course, crashes. are typically need to be mitigated with some other mechanism. Four-way stop control could be one of them, but what we would recommend in both of these instances would be to put in a number of other improvements, signage and striping. First, these recommendations are included in the plan, by the way, in the study, before we go to a four-way stop control. The reason being is that the MUTCD is very cautious about four-way stop control at intersections where there's not a balance of traffic and you don't have a high volume of traffic, which we don't have at these intersections. The traffic on the minor streets, Millard and Chapin, are really, really low. And the traffic on Leroy isn't that significant, except maybe during morning and afternoon commute hours, but still not a significant volume of traffic happening. So the MUTCD actually cautions against four-way stops. And so we would do the same at these intersections. We would recommend that you first implement the other recommendations that are in the report for signage and striping, and then reevaluate if crashes are still occurring. Look at the crashes again to see if maybe in the future a four-way stop is warranted. But right now, we think we would take some incremental steps. The other thing that we would recommend before a four-way stop control are other ways to maybe slow traffic down and to give people a cue to stop. And that would be to consider a raised intersection. And we talked a little bit about that when we were doing the walking audit. And it's essentially you build up the intersection. And there's in your report, there's a fact sheet from ITE, the International Transportation Professionals Organization, about how to do that. And that's going to take some engineering to do and obviously some road construction. So that would also potentially be a future project. But our recommendation right now for those two intersections, and really all of the intersections along Leroy, would be to do some additional striping, some signage improvements, your basic kind of low-cost, low-hanging fruit improvements that we believe would slow cars down, provide visual clues to people that they are approaching an intersection and either need to stop or slow down, look for pedestrians, and look for oncoming vehicles. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to review the report. If you have any questions, Jen and I are here to answer them. There's recommendations for almost all of the intersections, and they're pretty similar, right? So like I said, signage and striping, crosswalks. So nothing out of the ordinary, really, I wouldn't say. So if you have any questions, please, ask us now or later on if you decide to table this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, I just distributed this today ahead of your presentation. So I'll distribute it electronically too to the board, the council members in that district, and we'll try to get it to the residents who are there, who attended the walking audit with us too. And then if it's okay with you, if anyone has questions now, please feel free to ask. But if it's okay, if we could just, we have your contact information, kind of continue the dialogue ahead of the next meeting if there's any further questions after review. Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts today while Lee is here, or anything for BMTS off the bat? Okay, I just want to say again, thank you. We really appreciate the time and the effort and the thought that went into this. And we look forward to looking more closely at it and hopefully implementing some changes that make a difference for safety over there. So thank you for your time on it. We appreciate it.
Really surprised by how many people were driving the speed limit. It's
Who
interesting.
were driving the speed limit?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The kind of way we experience or see, because the people that are bad actors stand out to us so much more, gives me some hope to see how many people were within. It said here 66% of people were traveling at or below 30 miles per hour on Chestnut and Laurel, I'm like, to see that gives me some hope because I feel like generally people go above, and to know that, and maybe to get it out there that it's actually the majority of people are driving the speed limit. You're not doing the norm if you are actually speeding. Because I think there's maybe a sense in society right now that, well, everyone speeds, so I'm not doing anything wrong.
I agree. And a number of neighbors did comment on that. They thought people were speeding. And so that's why we thought it was really important to verify that and to ground truth whether or not that was happening, because that changes things. That changes your priorities and how you, what steps you take to make sure people are slowing down.
Okay, well, thank you so much again. We appreciate it. Okay, so we'll return to that at a future meeting, continue to review and get a copy of the drafts RSA out to stakeholders and residents. Okay, so we'll move on now to the next item on our agenda under new business, which is South Washington Street. This is a requested review of the on-street parking on South Washington between Morgan Road and Corbett Avenue. This was brought up by a resident as part of the discussion around Woodland Avenue at our last traffic board meeting. We have already kind of gone over multiple times the concerns and some of the changes that we'll be implementing in that area related to mostly winter weather driving on the hills in that area. But this is sort of a new issue that was raised, and we requested the traffic division take a look. So Sergeant Mushlik, I'm not sure, were you able to get out there to review this request?
Yeah, we went out there yesterday and or after we had the meeting, and it's just a wind, like you said, the winter.
Can you, I don't know if your mic's on, Sergeant. It would be great if it.
We just found out that like a winter alternate side will cause parking issues everywhere, and
Okay.
then South Washington is the same thing, and they just, it looks like they're not taking that in consideration when they were saying that there's issues. Yeah, there's some violations, people, but those are daily occurrences and we stay on top of those. But
Okay, so at this point, more of an enforcement issue. We don't recommend any changes to the signage or anything there.
no.
Okay. Okay,
Megan, sorry to jump around.
Yeah.
I think we need a motion to table the Leroy Street.
oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Tito. Okay, I would look for a motion to table the road safety assessment for Leroy Street review.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That's tabled. Okay. So no recommended changes for the on-street parking in this portion of South Washington Street. Any questions or discussion from board members here? Okay, this was the resident had sort of just requested this, if I'm recalling correctly, as something that the traffic division and the city take a look at. There were no specific proposed changes, so I don't think it requires any action from the board at this time, since there is nothing being recommended to the traffic division. But I will share the traffic division's findings with the resident that voiced the concerns at the last board meeting, and just encourage them to reach out if they continue seeing issues there. And I would say if we hear from anyone who sees issues with parking in that area, just pass them along to us so we can continue to monitor it. Okay. So moving on now to traffic board determinations. The first up is a request to prohibit on-street parking on Duffy Court. This comes from the city's Department of Public Works and Binghamton Police Department Traffic Division in an effort to address some challenges in this area related to snow removal and refuse collection that exists in the cul-de-sac there, specifically when vehicles are parked on the street. So we drafted a letter for residents of the apartment complex, just notifying them of the proposed changes and asking for their input. We at our last meeting, we had said we were trying to work with the property manager to have them distribute the letter to residents there, but didn't really have any luck in getting a response. So DPW went out and distributed in a similar way that they do for mill and pave notices to make sure that residents over there were aware. So we appreciate that. We received 3 calls and 4 emails from individuals with their feedback. Of those, 6 individuals were against the proposed change. One of them seemed to have mixed feelings. We were getting feedback on this up until pretty recently, past the Christmas holiday. So I'd like to give the board a chance to review some of those. The emails specifically had, I think, some alternative suggestions for the board to consider. So I'll share those with the board after today's meeting, and they'll have the contact information for the residents that reached out to if any board members are interested in following up. But to give the board a chance to review that, I think we can table this until the February meeting unless there's any questions or discussions now.
Motion to table.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll return to that next month. And last on our agenda is requests to replace the 15-minute parking side outside 29 Fayette Street. The request is to replace the signage there with new signage to prevent parked cars from obstructing buses during drop-off and pickup at the child care center located at that address. So this request comes from the Family Enrichment Network. We've had this on the agenda at the last few board meetings where board members had some questions. So we reached out to the applicant and shared the applicant's contact with board members who wanted to discuss this a little bit further and get clarity. And I believe the traffic division has been out there also to kind of take a look and assess. Just to provide the background again, there is currently signage directly in front of the building that states 15-minute parking, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. There's also buses only signage nearby that I think may have been installed by the property owner there and is likely not in compliance with city traffic code or would have been something that went to traffic board. So there does exist a need to clean up some of the signage in that area and bring it into compliance and hopefully make it clearer to motorists that they should not be parking in that area. Ben is asking for some signage that makes it clear that this is a bus zone specifically, rather than just generic no parking signage. So in consulting just briefly with BMTS, it seems like there are a couple of options that would be appropriate based on the MUTCD. The leading candidate is what that MUTCD refers to as the R7-107, which is just no parking with bus stop under it. So that will hopefully combine some of the signage there and make it a little bit clearer to motorists in the area, what's being asked of them. And I think that keeping those hours, as stated now, the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. during weekdays, makes sense in terms of achieving what Ben is looking for and making sure that there are spots available to residents attending church services on Sundays or baseball games down the road on nights and weekends. So that is I think kind of what we're leaning towards after a couple rounds of discussion on this, but happy to hear any comments or thoughts or questions from board members if there are any.
I just wanted to say I did reach out to Councilwoman Rathmel, and she had no questions for Fen and no issue with the sign replacement. So
Okay.
I reached out to the council person.
Great, thank you. Chief, I know you had a question at a previous board meeting about the development that's happening nearby. From what I understand, there's off-site parking for the tenants there to utilize, and based on the demographics that building will be serving, it's supportive housing and some units reserved for individuals facing homelessness. There's not an expectation that there will be like a car for every unit there. So given that this was supposed to be 15-minute parking to begin with, it shouldn't be limiting the on-street parking there to a huge degree. If we make the change to no parking just within this window. It's something that we can monitor too, and if we hear from residents or hear again from Ben that something needs to be tweaked, I think we can consider that, but for the time being, this should help clean up some of the existing signage there. No concerns. All right, so if no other discussion on this, I would look for a motion then to replace the existing signage outside of 29 Fayette Street relating to buses and 15-minute parking with the no parking bus stop signage, R7-107, with the hours that were previously noted. Is there a motion? Is
Motion.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Any other business items, discussion items from board members or otherwise today? Okay, if not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion from the councilman? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?